Okay, everyone. Should get some pretty good movements here. I'm kind of focused on my own position, so I don't really want to share too much. You guys already know our plan and what we're working with, so there isn't really, honestly, too much to add. We could easily see some two-directional volatility here, especially with the markets moving like this. Okay, 236, this is a pretty big point in time here, especially off that 6888, 6886 potential stall. Let's just see if they're able to turn this around here. And get this into the zone. I think they should be able to get this into the zone because I'm pretty sure when we looked at mid-ranges, everything above here, there was nothing. Can you guys hear me or no? So I'm not wasting my breath. I didn't have anything in between. Like basically 8.1 and 8.8. Everything was above 8.8. So 8.8, 9.2, 9.6, 9.3. So them stalling 8.6 doesn't really have confluence. I don't really see the confluence in them stalling 8.6. So, but I think to break, they'd have to turn this around pretty quick. And by pretty quick, I mean like now. I don't think they have time to stall these areas here. Okay, 6885.75. Where's the 688991? I'm gonna put my old triggers back on. 88. 6896 had a lot of confluence today along with 98. We'll see if they can get this into the zone. If they can get this into the zone today, then our 6920 for tomorrow could still be in play. I feel like that for today is probably a limited odd, but we'll see. Okay. This is the 3.8. Did you guys capture this move off 3.3 or even off 4.2? Or even off, I guess, 4.852. 4.852 is a bit more risky. I feel like longs off the 30s were a little bit safer, especially off our 3.2, 3.8, 4.2, 4.4 area. Like at this point, remember how I said when they bring this back around, we have to start holding off 68.50? So this was good that they didn't break this back down into the channel. Let me also delete these zones. I did say that if they can bring it back to these areas here, then we have some pretty good odds. And they did a really good job sustaining this blue zone here, which was a bullish neutral area for the markets. So let's see if we can get some breaks. Also, I'm watching if Apple breaks high of day here. Also, Citigroup is getting to that 112 target that I talked about this morning. If anyone was trading that. Okay, everyone here should have caught this though. I don't think there should be a single person here at least off 6833, 6838 to 6844. So mid-ranges being broken means that we now have some odds. So if we achieve mid-range, we have odds of 6, 8, 9, 9 area. Okay, that was the idea here. This is if they break us each end of the trade for the week. That means this, okay? Whatever I just said. I'm gonna copy paste it again so that you guys have it. And that means that I don't know if we'll get these, but we'll just keep this as a probability because I did mention this morning. Technically, if they do extensions here, that means that there was odds of this. So 69-14, 69-16, 69-18, etc., etc., etc. I don't think that that's going to be the case if they end up stalling 8-8. And a lot of this is going to be based on what they do over like the next 10-15 minutes. Some pretty mass volatility coming in off these stalls here. This is why I was saying they'd have to retrace this immediately. Otherwise, they could start getting that back and forth volatility. These are definitely enough ranges to be considered a max range for today's session. I'm kind of watching closer to that 45 to 48 period here too, just to see if they can turn this back around. Is this the 4-1 stick? Yeah, these are okay. I feel like they'd probably need at least back over 6-8 or 7-1 by the 4-8 to 4-5 period, like this period here. Otherwise, this is going to be a pretty big risk of taking us back to lows. I feel like they need to at least get back to this area here. Like back to like the mid-ranges. Apple also stalled highs by like the tick. Like this period here, I think is pretty important that they at least get back to these areas here. Otherwise, I would say that that range is probably in for the session today. And then they could make it pinnable at core areas, okay? Does that make sense? If they don't take this higher into the zone, this is how it could become pinnable at core. I'm going to mute myself for a bit. Okay, do you guys see that? There's the 245, 68, 71 break, which gives odds of coming back and retesting those high ranges here by the 248, 250 period. This is good. And ideally, we want to, this is basically the point in time, guys, that they can reset this 2 o'clock period. Because at 2 o'clock, they didn't break, where was it? The 2 o'clock stick didn't break 7-1. So I just wanted to see if they would give it an odd of resetting this here. Okay, so see if they can at least get some better structure breaks between the 245 and 250 period. Well, that was the condition though, 245. It was basically to get back to mid-ranges. Do you guys listen sometimes? Sometimes I actually don't think that anyone listens to me. So the conditions were, yes. Okay, mid-range is triggering back at 2:45 to 2:48 p.m. Okay, is crucial because this is what can, and those are that 687325. That's what they triggered here. They triggered exactly that. What's the next range? 687575. Okay, they broke that and then stalled. So the overhead is kind of between the 7750 to 7775. So see if they can try taking out basically 78 by 248. That can give us an odd of retesting those highs as early as 250. Okay. Okay. Otherwise, this could become pinnable, guys, at core areas. I think this would just reduce risk, but it could still make it pinnable if they don't start clearing before 3. Hopefully that makes sense. WFC also went vertical. I don't know if anyone took that. I shared that this morning. Back down in here. These were some really good trades on the banks for some outside bars. Look at that, engulfed. Yeah, so for stalling here, we're going to watch the 30-second final break here to see if they bring it back over 7-1. That could give it an odd here, but it definitely has to take out that 7325. It needs to break this 7775. That's the overhead right here for these mid-ranges. Do you see how this is the midpoint between the final 15 before 3 and the mid-ranges? That would give it an odd of retesting highs. Do you guys understand this concept or no? You can't get to the next mid-range unless you clear this mid-range right here, especially during this period. Your next mid-ranges would give you odds of getting to 60, 68.96, 68.98, 68.99. You won't get that odd unless they clear these mid-ranges during this period of time. Otherwise, they'll probably keep it stuck, and that's where it could become pinnable. What time is it? So what do you guys think? You think that they'll end up giving us these structure breaks here, or you think that they're going to stall? What do you think? So far, they're struggling quite a bit off the 7.7, 7.6 breaks, especially between this 248 to 250 period. I'm watching the 30-second turnaround just to see if they give some better odds. 7325 isn't bad. At least this gives us somewhat of an odd. Are you guys watching this? Look at what they did. Look, right where I had the cursor mark. That's insane. Did you guys see that? Are you guys watching? That's crazy. Accurate. That is to the second. That's insane. Did you see that? Okay, this keeps that window open, guys, for the... There's a bit of a period between 51 and 54. It was kind of like a second late, but it still got that break. This could give us some odds of retesting here by 253, 254. Ahead, basically, of 3 o'clock. That was pretty crazy that they did that kind of like the final, like, 5 seconds here when they got that 7-3 close. Do you see that? 7-3-2-5 close is what gave this a probability. They took it right back to 7-3-2-5, right the final second. That's insane. And then as soon as the first 5-second interval flipped here, look, they took it right to 7-7-7-5, which was the mid-range. 68.89 is, sorry, 68.99 is in play. Hey, 6899 is in play. Can someone write that down, please? Based on that kind of increment breaking. Especially if they can take out these high ranges here. We're back to weekly OR, 68, 83, 85. If they can clear this here and get us to the zone by 54, we have pretty good odds, guys, of getting 6,899. Those are the next mid-range intervals that we have, especially because those conditions were met on time. I need someone to write that down in the Discord in case, because there's some people that can't join the stream, guys. Look at that. 52. 53 had the earliest odd of breaking this high. Let's see. If they can take out this high and get us to the zone by 54, those mid-ranges are definitely in play. Let's see. Someone write this down for Elgo. He has a class going on. Mid-range conditions were met at midpoints in time, which is going to help our odds here in terms of getting some nice structure breaks. We want to see a break of 68.88. 68.88 will get us a zone entry. 68.88 today is also calculated. And the best point in time to do this would be right before 54, because 54 could snap us back to a weekly highs of 68.92, 68.93 ahead of 3 o'clock. There it is. Zone break, guys, right at 254. We should see a 68.91, 92 retest here. This is exactly what we want to see at this point in time. I hope that helped you guys hold a bit longer. That's a perfect range break, you guys, at perfect time. Look, they just took out weekly highs, or they're retesting weekly highs here. That's insane. 68, 92, 93 retested at exactly 254. That's perfect timing, you guys, and perfect price points to hit. 6899 should be in play before 3. We'll see if they can close at least over 88. These are the mid ranges. It's not exactly 68.99, by the way. It's 68.98.5. I know that doesn't really matter, but anyway. And Apple broke highs too. Okay, let me focus on my positions because I don't even think I covered. I don't even think I have a sell order in. Hold on. See if we can get continuation. I think continuation over 9325 immediately after is very, very important here. Okay? Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for the subs. forgot to post on Twitter too. I forgot to post that too. Thank you so much for the subs. That means a lot. Did you guys capture that? You know what's insane too is we bought literally the low of day off 3-2. This is such a nice trade. This took a lot of patience though to hold. But it was mostly them holding this 4-2 area here. This is some really good continuation. What do you guys think? Do we trigger 68, 98, 99 before 3? That was the thought if these conditions were met on time, which they were. They saved it final second. Literally at exactly 250 and 59 seconds. That is crazy that they did that. And then they tested 6888 right before, and that was right before 54. 253 had the earliest odd of breaking high of day, which it did. 254 had the best odd of taking out 6888 and testing 6893 weekly highs, which it did, which is giving us a very good odd of tagging 6898, 6898 being tested here. 6896 was also a calculated range. If someone wants to find them in the chat, I don't have all of them saved, obviously, but Bank of America also getting some really good structure breaks, guys. I did mention this one earlier, too, for the bank plays. I don't know if anyone traded these, but it's getting that break to that 54.42, 54.39 on BAC. This one also had a really good structural hold at 53.85 ahead of FOMC. And I did say make sure you're watching financial strength and some of the energy names ahead of numbers reporting, just because that could actually help us. What do you guys think? Who here thinks that they're going to trigger 9.8? So my target is 9.850 before 3. We're pretty fucking close. This is super close. If they trigger 9.850, what does this mean? Especially if they do it at this point in time, you guys. This is important because this is where we could see an extension. How much time do we have? So we want to trigger this at 59. There it is. 68.98.50 being triggered here ahead of 3 o'clock, you guys. That means that 69.14 to 69.18 could be in play today. And we could see those neutral ranges being triggered. We have a tiny, tiny, tiny odd of triggering 69.20 today. Today's the earliest that we could have done that based on the conditions for the week and the structural flips. The odds are not super high, but this would give us that 2-day engulfing scenario that we talked about. Okay, so 2-day has now engulfed. And we discussed this yesterday and the day before as a probability. That actually played out, so and they could take this into an outside break. We've talked about that quite a bit. Look at that. That's when we were trading back down in this range here. This was a perfect outside bar scenario. That was before we even flipped. We talked about that on Monday. Do you guys see where they stalled it here? 689850. 689850 exactly before 3. That's insane. Do you know how crazy that is? That's exact price at exact time. That is insane. And they took it out right at 3, which implies that they could have that extended odds. I would be a little bit careful though, you guys, just because just because this is going to be a pretty big area for overhead. I know I said 6899, but the actual area is 6898.50 because I was just doing this. That was just the 6 points. Do you guys want me to show you what that is real quick now that I covered? It's just the differential between, where was it? See, I said 9, but it wasn't actually that. It was a little bit more than that. Hold on. So the difference between 6836 and that 68, basically, where did it go? This area here, okay? And I know I said it was 6 points, but just kind of like an actual range, okay, of that. You could have also used this. So like 4.5 points basically. Beneath that 6893. What would that give you? 4.5 points beneath 6893 should give you what is that? That 89 and then above 93. 0.75. Yes, do you see what I'm saying? Do you guys see that or no? I'm just trying to show you exactly what it is. I just wrote down estimated points in the chat because to give you guys an idea, but the actual range is this, okay? Which is why that was so important to trigger before the final hour. It's the same offset, okay? I just want to show you guys what it is. This is the exact offset, okay? I was just using like rough areas, okay? But, and if you measure it off like the prior range, it's closer to 5.5. 5.5 should give you this 9925 range, which is pretty close to where they stalled at 3, okay? And they broke that at 3 too. So this could give us pretty good odds of getting those extensions. Does that make sense? So based on all these ranges coming into play, this is also the 34 point cleared break here and 44 points in range. Okay, this was 34 points, 33 points. Okay, right here, right at 2. I don't know if you guys saw that, which can easily put you in play for the 66 to 68 point intervals, which is exactly where they tested here. Okay, so this is just another way of looking at it, but I'm just going to make it very base theory and do the 34 since this was the 50% range. 34. And then the 34, which should be pretty close to where they stalled. Okay? That was also the 50% break. That's why I was saying earlier, what area do we have to break that would put us at an odd? And you guys all got it wrong. But do you see now why 686450 was technically all you needed to get the bigger structure breaks right here? Do you guys see what I was talking about earlier? Look at where they stalled this this 2 p.m. stick. Look at the closing opening price of the stick. That's extremely calculated. And I would bet money that this was probably the 25% hold. Yes, it is. Do you see it? At 68.50, and this is now the extension. Okay, that gives you that odd to break 6898, which at the end of this, basically this is a core-to-core break. When you break core ranges, you don't break in increments of like 66, 68. Okay, I know this is 68 points, but you normally break 70s, 50s, 20s. Okay, so a core move is going to be closer to like 7.5, 7.3, 7.6, 7.7. That should get you the retest of 69.06. Do you see what I'm saying? And if you get a full extension, I know we could look at like 88-point intervals. Okay, that would be 68.19. But in theory, this is what could help get us those ranges of like, I don't think they're going to do this today based on how they're trading around here, but let's say if they did, that's how we could get like a channel to channel type break. 107 points would be to 69.38. I think that they could get there by tomorrow though, or by Friday, and that would be the channel to channel type of week we discussed for 11th through 12th. Okay, so 69.33, 69.38, 69.44. That's if they want to nest the channel to close off the week. If they take out 69.20. We don't have to take out 69.20 today. Obviously, it would be nice if we did, but we definitely don't have to. Okay. I think the most important thing here is going to be like clearing these neutral zones probably within the first quarter of the hour. So like the first 15 minutes, okay, of this hour is going to, I think, help us determine if we're going to get 69.20s today. Okay. Is everyone on the same page? These are also 70-point ratios here. Okay. Which from a core basis, because this is a core hold, these would align with core ratios, which could mean what? What could that potentially imply? What could that potentially imply, getting these kind of ratios, you guys? These are very, very, very huge spots for the index. $69.06 is the overhead for the week. Remember what I said, if you come back here next time, you definitely don't want to stall these types of areas. So what could these ranges be? Please don't get this wrong. What kind of ranges could they be working with here? You guys are not understanding the question. Forget the zone. Think about the ratios we're working with. Okay? Yes, we definitely don't want to stall this neutral area. We don't want to stall the bear zone. We don't want to stall 6905. We don't want to stall 6901. We don't want to stall this range. Not today. Not on the 10th. The 10th is a really bad time to stall this, okay? If we're looking at this from a core hold, what kind of ratios would we look for? What kind of areas could these be? Oh my God. What kind of areas are we working with right now? I know it's a neutral zone, but these are, what ratios are these? Forget the zone. What ratios are we working with here? Forget this color scheme. Think about it from a ratio perspective. What are these ratios? We just talked about it. From highs to lows. We opened at 4-3 today. From highs to, these are core ratios, okay? This is really, really important that they clear these kind of ratios, okay? Do you see what I'm saying? Do you understand what I mean? From highs to lows, we're working with about 70 something points. Those are core ratios. So that could imply what? Max ranges, okay? We have to be very cautious here. These are huge spots. You're working with 75% of the range from a core perspective. Does that make sense? Because core ratios, you get, basically think of it as 25, 50, 75, 100, okay? It's not exactly that, but think of it as that. So that's, we're hitting 75%, correct? You've got 75% left of the hour. Are you paying attention? If you clear 75% of the core ratio with 75% left in the hour, how high are your odds to trigger the remaining ratios? I really hope you guys are understanding this. 315 would be the 75% point for, like 25% left for the, or triggered for the hour, and you still have 75% left for the hour. This is also 75% of the range. From a core perspective. And doesn't that make sense though? What time is it? What's the weekly highs? Like this, of course, this is going to be the overhead at this point in time. Of course, these are going to be like the 75% core ratios, like 73, 72, 75. Yes, and to the channel, you guys. We can get to 6830s. Wake up! See, well, you guys are missing like a potentially massive trade if they break these ranges here, okay? Because when you work with core ratios, they don't stop. They just kind of go in between. Yes, we can still look at 88 points. Obviously, we're going to look at 69, 16, 18, whatever, and see how we react there. But usually core ratios, guys, trigger 104, 107. Do you see what I'm saying? That's why I'm yelling at you guys. Like, you have to pay attention here. And if they do it at this point in time, our odds are pretty high. Okay? If they stall here, though, then we'd rather just nest. We don't want to go too high if we can't get high enough. Does that make sense? And if they want to do it in two parts, since we have odds for the 11th, then we need to at least be 69, 14, 18. Okay? That would be the same thing as achieving 88 points or these mid ratios. Does that make sense? These are the next mid ratio extensions here of like 44 point intervals, which is the same thing as 88 points from lows. Okay? And that's kind of like the median between like 70 or 100 points, or 107 points, I guess is another way you can think about it. Which they would just leave odds for tomorrow. That would give it the extension, okay? This can give weekly extension to 6930s. Does that make sense? If they don't clear these ranges today. And a lot of this is going to be based off what they do, I think, over like these next 2 minutes. especially stalling 69.05, 69.06. Okay, because these are massive areas here. Does that make sense? So far, a bit of a reduction stick off the 15. We'll see if the immediate negation stick off 16 can give us these structure breaks. $3.16 is aligned with 4 o'clock. What do you guys think? You think that they clear this or no? Just quickly yes or no in the chat, because this is a pretty big area for the market to clear, especially if they still have 45 minutes left in the session. Oh, BAC actually did take out. Oh. Where did my Apple chart go? I don't know where my Apple chart went. Do you see how it's starting to feel a lot heavier in this range in here? What do you think that is? Why is this feeling a little bit heavy here? Well, one, the 69.05 is a pretty big overhead, and two, what's two? Time, time, yes, but not in relation to this. I guess like stalling here, but like in relation to range. In relation to range, you guys. Okay. Does that make sense? You guys have to start getting better at understanding the types of range you have on a given day based off where they open, closed, and highs and lows. Okay, that's something that I need to make sure that you guys start improving on. So these are core ratios. These could be max core ratios. And it makes sense based on where they held. Okay? Which is another reason why I really wanted us to trigger between 68.22 and 68.32, because then it helps us get odds of getting 69.03, 69.05, 69.10 retest. Does that make sense? Even though they're not core areas, they're correlated to core ratios. Does that make sense to you guys? I know these aren't core areas, but these are correlated to core ratios. Just like these were here. And the reason I'm calling them mid ratios for the session is because they could be like 6 points beneath, 3 points beneath our actual core ranges. Do you get what I'm saying? ES really trying here in those first 5-minute intervals post 3:15. I was looking at the 3:18 to 3:21 period to see if they try triggering 69.0550. What was that weekly range? I know 6906 is huge, but 6905. It makes sense too that these are all off these ranges because those are the areas that we failed. Just think of cores as like increments of 25%. Okay. So basically when you already started hitting a 50 to 52 point ratio, you already started getting odds. Okay. Like as soon as you hit these ratios here, 20, you see how this is like 25, 26? That makes sense because that's a core hold. Do you see what I'm saying? And then once you broke at 230, look, these are 52 point breaks. These are core breaks. And that's what took you back to your weekly OR. Your weekly OR was a core open. Do you get what I'm saying? Those are core ratios. So you should get 55, 52, 56, 72, 74, 75, 76. Okay? '21 didn't quite close above 05, so just kind of watching that there. Do you want to watch the imbalance period though too? And it would make sense if these wanted to be like the max ranges for the session today. What did I say could be the max ranges for today's session? If they wanted to take us there. Where could they cap the range for today? If we had those extensions. And the extensions heavily vary on what they're going to do in these price ranges at these points in time, especially before the last half hour. Otherwise, they could just keep this pinnable. Because at this point now, I think we definitely have to hold the 9.2, 9.3, 9.6 area. I'll mark 9.850. What are the potential max ranges for the session today? If they want to take this any higher. That's a good hold of 9.6 here. And they're trying to turn this back for the 24.25. We'll see if they have enough momentum to break this ahead of imbalance prints, like before 330. So around 327, 320 would be the best point. I689 would be the same as October 28th highs. CX would be the same as 6906. Okay. So there is a difference, okay? So we've got our max ratios. We've got our mid-max ratios. So like these are based off mid-range, okay? And then you have your max core ratios. You have to be able to understand the difference between the three, okay? What's our mid-range ratios? The max that we said that they could trigger. Nope. No. Do you guys not listen or read anything that I say? Like, come on. 6903, Noble Mom, how is that your max ratio if you've already hit 6903? That's like, that doesn't even make sense. These would be like mid-range max ratios, okay? If they start hitting closer to like extensions off like these mid-ranges, okay? Or what we discussed, like, yes, exactly. We talked about it this morning. Range is using just the base theory, 34, 44, 88 points, 66 points, whatever, 88 points. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Versus the actual types of ranges they're trading around. They traded around mid-ranges based on breaching both sides, above and below. So I could tell that they were going back and forth, which usually gives you like a mid-range. Based on where they held, though, is a core hold. That could give you core ratios. Do you get what I'm saying? I don't really know how else to explain it other than what I just said. You might have to like listen to that a bunch of times to get what I'm saying, but it should make sense. Whereas these could be the max mid-range calculations, okay? So like these are more of like, okay, off the actual mid ratios, which were the 70.75, 72, 74, 75, 77. That's how you can get these areas, okay? You have to see where there's the most confluence, and that's likely going to be your max ratios for the session today. So they've already hit 68 points. So I would say that the area that has the most confluence from a base ratio perspective and the actual ratios we're working with are the 69-19. Do you guys agree? An expansion scenario off a core ratio, okay, because this is a core range, would be the same thing as getting like 94 points, 96 points, right? These are also the same thing as getting like if you go 3, 4, 6 divide by 3, or if you go the 107 divide by 3 by 3, like that's 107, right? 107 divide by 4. If you go 256 by 3, those are usually around 85 to 88 points. 256 divide by 4. Do you see what I'm saying? 346. Or if you do 128. What's 3/4 of 128? To 132 points. How many points is that usually? If you hit 3/4 of, and that's why I'm saying like they could do these types of ratios since it is a mid-range odd, okay? And since core odds are, that's kind of a big stretch. Do you see what I'm saying? This would be more of like mid-range. 96 points is 3/4 of 128. Okay. Those are core areas. And the reason that that could be the case is because if they actually hit full core ranges today, that means they could go to the channel. Okay, so odds of that happening, like 6, 9, 3, 8, they can be not as high. Okay, but that could be the ranges that we're working with for the week. Does that make sense, you guys? This is what I'm going to put out in tonight's report. So rewatch this video with us so that you guys can understand what I'm saying. And then from a max weekly ratio, not a core ratio, a max weekly ratio, okay, you should be able to have like, how do I explain this? 69.44 is probably going to be like 113, 115 points. Those are like core ratios, okay? Whereas, what would be a max ratio for the week from lows? If they extend us, and this is how we'll know based on what metrics they meet today. Okay? Do you see what I'm saying? Is everyone on the same page? So if they hit and trigger these kind of ratios today, we have some pretty decent odds of breaking all-time highs this week. Especially if you can trigger these core ranges, okay? Or like, and the core ranges align with these areas here anyway. So same with the weekly ranges, like closer to like the mid-max ratios that we talked about. I feel like they'd have a condition that they'd have to get to the channel probably by tomorrow or something for that to be the case. Otherwise, they'll just end up stalling here. 332 getting those structure breaks. I am watching to see what they do between that 36 to 38 window, especially around the 6910, 6914 area. Is everyone on the same page as me, or are you guys confused? I'm not sure how many more ways I could explain like core ratios versus mid-range versus intraday range versus weekly range, or like it's kind of relative to the trade, okay? And the areas that have the most confluence today are what? And this is kind of where I'll start working with that. What area has the most confluence? And that area is usually what I would think is going to be like the spot that they could stall. Which area has the most confluence? This is more complex, but it is a Fed session, so I wanted to do the more complex intervals because FOMC is obviously complex, right? And of course, our Fed session traded around our mid-max ratios, okay? So I think I know a thing or two about time, price, intervals, whatever, but this is just on a wider frame, okay? So which area has the most confluence for us guys today? And I feel like all we have to do is trigger that to have those weekly ratios in play, or to keep us in play through the 16th. Meaning if they delay us this week, they keep us in the channel, they take us back to the zone. Let's say they take us to 69.38, then they take us back to 69.20, then they pin the week at 69.20. Okay, and then they delay us until the 14th or 15th or something like that. Okay. Where would we have to trigger today to even give us an odd? For the week to potentially get an all-time high retest. Which area has the most confluence? Thanks, Vincy. No. For max ranges today, which area has the most confluence? Yes, the 16, 14, 18 area. I think it's close to like that 1850 spot. This area here has the most confluence. Okay? This range in here. Okay? Whether or not they break that, expand, give us 69.20s today, I feel like that's going to be relative to if they can trigger these areas before the final 15. Doesn't that make sense? Because if they want to pin the close, wouldn't they want to pin it here? Right? Like if they want to avoid this. So if they're saving max ratios for the close, this is why they could just be stalling here a little bit. I really don't want them to stall 69.08, 69.10. Because that wouldn't really be a good look. If they take it out even just slightly, that would be better for us. And I think based on what they did, they don't necessarily have to take out 69.20, but I think it's kind of important that they at least try testing 69.14 and 69.18. Otherwise, that could create some pretty mass volatility for the markets this week. Does that make sense to you guys? And it's also based off like stalling an 88-point ratio for the week or something. Okay, so because these are technically core ratios, which is why it might be okay. Does that make sense? Like, I know stalling 69.08 doesn't look like the most ideal scenario, especially on December 10th, because today's a flip date. But from a core to core perspective, if they can keep the... Okay, so let's say they don't break 69.10 today, or 69.06, okay? Or like they stall 69.08, 69.10, they stall neutral ranges. What would be the condition to avoid mass volatility? Because technically from a core ratio, it's enough. What would they have to do? And this is like a must. There's no like conditions like between it. They would have to do this. Otherwise, the volatility would be pretty high. What would they have to do? We're assuming they end up stalling in this area here. What would be required of the market? not necessarily has to hold 69.14 overnight. Because if you don't even trigger 69.14 in real time, that's not really a condition. But you would have to have based on where it held, it's only okay because it's a core ratio, okay? But you would have to have what? What do you have to have the next day? Continuation. You cannot stall. That's why some days you get those Fed days or catalyst days, and then you have slight continuation the following day. It's just to avoid like mass risk or volatility. In this case, if they end up stalling these areas today, that would be the condition, okay? Does that make sense? And this definitely seems like a duration till close type of trade here. I want to see if they hold off 6898. This is a pretty big trigger into the close, especially with these mid ratios, because 98 is linked to the 14, 16, 18 areas. So losing that, I think, would definitely decrease our odds. And I want to see if they can retract or retrace before the final 15 minutes. Is everyone on the same page? Otherwise, that would send you back to, like, losing here could take you back to these mid ratios. That's where you'd have a pinnable close at core. And sometimes is that the best case scenario if they were going to stall here? Yes, that would be, okay? If they sustain, then hopefully it at least commits to getting to these ranges in here. Okay, is everyone on the same page? This would be like a midweek close back to weekly open kind of thing, like back to like 7-7, 7-8, 8-1, 8-3. Okay, this scenario would be like where it's going to commit to trying to get these ranges in here and then try tagging the 69.20s overnight or by tomorrow. Okay, and I think this is relative to where they hold here before the final 15. So far they're trying to hold off 69, 68, 99, 98. I definitely think that they need at least back over this 69.05, 06 area though. Definitely before 350. We'll see if they can do it by, I don't know if they can do it right now, but like as early as 45, but that would obviously be more ideal. I was thinking more closer to like here, but if they do it as early as 45, that's even better, because then we could take out highs as early as like 348, 349, and maybe test that 69.10, 69.09, 69.05 being retested here right in the 345 interval before the final 15. I hope you guys had a good session today. I feel like this was too calculated and I gave you guys so many details that there's no reason why you should have had a good session today. Even if you didn't capture this, at least to these areas here. How many here? Let's see. Max range for real time today. Let's see. 69.08, 69.10. 69.14 to 69.18, 69.20 plus. I'll just do that. I don't know. I feel like that's good enough. I'll set that for 5 minutes. Can you guys vote on that, please? So my thoughts here, if they clear 69.0550 and the high before 350, I think we have some pretty decent odds of triggering at least 69.14 by that 350 interval, and they could just be saving this for end of day. I'm targeting 69, 16, 25, 69, 69, 18.50 if they break these ranges, okay? As much as I want core to like 2.3, 2.4, I'm not sure if they can do it in real time based on where they stalled, okay? So I'll mark them anyway, but I don't think those odds are that high. We'll see. And a lot of this is going to be based on them actually clearing and breaking these areas anyway. We're not that far off from those highs, but that's still a pretty risky area to stall. Apple's getting decent traction though. They're still keeping risk on here because they tested 69.05 but stalled. But they haven't taken out 68.99, 68.98. This is basically keeping both ends of this trade open. Okay. Stalling here too, you guys, like I said, like if they break 9.8, I guess the zone close wouldn't be bad, but I feel like at that point they might just end up taking it back to these ranges in here. That would be like the short setup into the close if they stall or fail to break these ranges, okay? How much time do we have left? Here's the 68.98.5 retest just ahead of 350, which could be pretty risky. See if they try holding this range here. Breaking it would definitely imply that they could get back down to 8.8. Sustaining could trigger that 69.05 break. It's a pretty huge spot here ahead of the final 10 minutes. Do you guys see how calculated this is? Where did they stall? 9875. They also left that room here too to 9293 that I noticed after they held 96 after the 3 p.m. interval. This is kind of like a mid-range support between 88 and 99. What would be your final odds of trying to turn this back around here? Considering they stalled 69.05. So they tested 69.05 in the 15-minute interval. They held 6898 before 350 and at 350. They broke it down just after 350. What would your conditions be for 354, 355? What did majority vote? Majority voted 14 and 18. I would say if they don't retract over 69.0550 by that 354.55 window, then definitely not. That's kind of like their last odd of breaking it back. If they keep it in this range in here, though, they could have some odds after the close. So at the very least, you would probably need at least 98.50, by 53. That makes total sense, right? And then maybe like a 02, 03 break by 5.4, and then that 05 break by 5.5. Otherwise, that could just keep this stuck in this zone area here. You guys made me almost lose my voice today. I'm going to mark the 5-6 interval too. What do you guys think? This is a pretty fair game here between 9-2 or 08. Watch the 30-second turnaround. I just want to see if they try taking out 9-8 during this period here. So far they're stalling 9-8-50. Which to me looks pretty bearish. I'm giving it that 1 minute odd for turnaround, which I don't usually do, but because of the fact that they did break 05, it could keep that duration in play, and because there's technically a little bit of room to 9-1, 9-2. Where do you guys think they're going to pin the close? Yeah, it was once they stalled 05, Brendan, at 345, and then they couldn't get it back to retrace, but they did hold 9850 here, so that could at least give it an odd of trying to retrace by close. Not necessarily breaking this range in here, but at least trying to like sustain 92, 93 maybe ahead and trying to get back over 98, 99, 01. Most of which is going to be relative to them probably sustaining this 992 area, because 92 is our calculated spot, which is pretty funny that they're testing this the final like 2 minutes into the close today. This is also a good example of like, if they can't take it high enough, it's better that they take it just a little bit lower. 9.4 is too low though, Brendan. It would need to close at least at 9.850 or like 9.9. Or at the least 9.6. 9.4 doesn't really have that much confluence today. 68.92 being tested into the last minute of the session. That was kind of my max drawdown for the final 15 if they sustained or retraced. Otherwise, we were at major risk of getting back to core ranges around 68.78, 68.73, 68.81, which at this point I feel like it's maybe more favorable for odds to get back to 68.98. I guess we'll see what they do. That would be a lot of pressure, though, for them to try to come back in and retract this range. I'm just going to set these. Yeah, maybe. Well, we also have... See, 9.2 is better. 68.92 is more calculated. That's a little bit better than closing at like 9.4 or 8.8, I would say, just because 9.2 is a more calculated range for the market. We'll see if they can try retracting some of this after the bell. Seems like they probably want to keep this range stuck. I think Oracle, does Oracle report today? Anyway, nonetheless, I still think that this was still a really good session, especially for learning purposes in terms of like them stalling, them breaking. They did stall at core ratios, which is fine. That's probably the only reason why it might be okay that they stalled the neutral range. But that being said, I think it's going to be vital that they have some continuation into tomorrow. Otherwise, that's where the risk can start to increase. I just want to check one thing. I mean, Oracle's holding up pretty good. I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have on the index, though. We still have the extended period on the 4-day until the 16th, so this could also help mitigate some of this risk. 2-day runs until the 12th, so tomorrow would be part of this. I feel like that's likely an important factor in terms of this avoiding stalling these neutral ranges again, is that we can have those extensions from the 10th through the 16th like we talked about. So like with the 11th and 12th and the 14th probably being the most important dates because they would be like the breaking range or closing dates. So we'll see where they end up taking this. Okay, I'm going to sign off, guys. I'll have something issued later on this evening, okay?